Hi, long time no talk.
Yeah, is somebody doing poetry?
I haven't gotten anybody yet, but I will check the list and see. Nobody took me up on my invitation. Not surprising, I guess. Adrian did send me poems. I haven't looked at them yet. But you know, I can always ask you. I'm glad to do it. I'd love to spread it around.
Well, he's also reading it.
Is he?
He has a reading in Bucks
Okay, all right. Are you going to go? Where is it?
Coventry.
Oh, where the bookstore?
Yeah, that's the book.
On Coventry, not on Cedar. You know the one I'm referring to on Cedar, near the Starbucks and so on. No, I know it. And we're going to be going to Chicago. An opera and a play. It's so nice to continue this with her. You guys have good to say. There you go. How are you, Bob? I'll have to think about that. Yeah, you never know these days who's going to show up. Oh, good. Excellent. Good. Thanks. Hi. How are you? Good. Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. So nice to see you. Intermediary days of Pesach, and we say to one another, Moadim L'Simcha. These should be sacred gatherings for joy, for Simcha. So I'm hoping everybody is enjoying the holiday and enduring the bread of affliction. You never know here what's going to elicit applause. The Guardians. Yeah. That's great. Very good. Okay, welcome to live streamers. I understand that the live streaming is working well, so glad that it's up and running and doing well, and that you're with us. Okay, no bagel pickup today, no sponsor, no one to thank, except all of you for being here. Okay, very good. All right, let's continue with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctifies us through God's commandments, enjoining upon us the obligation to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. Amen. Oh, Sue and Bob Curtis. This morning's Torah study, Nash, was made possible through the generosity of Sue and Bob Curtis. This morning's study, Nash, why are we having two here? Through the generosity of Margie Moskowitz and Joe Canfer. Thank you. Okay. You guys will have to fight it out for who has priority here. Thanks very much. I don't get why we have two, but okay. Last week? Oh, very good. Okay. All right. So, as you probably know, when we are in one of the two holidays, Sukkot and Pesach, which are multi-day festivals, we have in the Sabbath in between, in the days of those holidays, a special reading, both for Sukkot, and I don't know if that's true actually now that I've said it, so I'm going to go to the back here. Okay, oh yeah, actually, right. For Sukkot and for Pesach, Exodus 33:12 through chapter 34:26. So the sages who put this together thought that this passage is very important for the understanding of these two holidays, multi-day holidays, and for the implications of these days. So what I'd like to do today is to take a look at this passage, starting with Exodus 33, verse 12. If we have time, I'd like to take a look at the Haftorah portion for today, and that is Ezekiel chapter 37, the very famous dry bones passage. So we'll just see how we're getting along here. Okay, so Exodus 33, let's back up and start at the beginning of chapter 33. The portion itself doesn't commence until verse 12. So let's set the stage. So the book of Exodus deals with persecution and the liberation from persecution. And at long last, after a long and protracted set of incidents, the Israelites are freed by God from Egypt, and they begin their trek toward the land of Israel. They run into problems. The climax of the Exodus story takes place in Exodus chapter 15 with the Song of Moses. They sang at the sea, Mi chamocha, who is like you, O Lord, among the mighty, and so on, a rhetorical question, the answer to which is no one. And you would think that with that climactic event, the singing of the sea, things are now going to be great. We've had an upward ascent, and we think it's going to continue from there. But lo and behold, the author/editor is too realistic for this. The author is optimistic in one of two ways. One way is to be optimistic and know that everything is going to be wonderful. The second way is to be hopeful and optimistic in spite of the fact that reality raises its ugly head over and over again. And between Exodus chapter 15 and Exodus 20, we have a variety of temptations, a variety of problems. We've looked at that before. 3 kinds of problem. Nature, the famines of nature, no water, that nature often withholds its generosity, and we have to face the depredations of nature. We have enemies. The Amalekites take place in this series of chapters. And human beings having been newly freed, and you would think the half-life of optimism would be at least a couple of weeks, are angry at Moses, where's the water? We'd prefer to go back to Egypt where everything was predictable. So the author takes into account on this massive journey to not only possibility but also impediment. Having arrived at Mount Sinai sobered, they received the 10 Commandments, and then in the next couple of chapters, laws, culminating in Moses at the end of chapter 24, going up to be with God, to receive the commandments. Chapter 25 begins the building of the tabernacle in the wilderness, one of the great institutions of biblical religion, the Mishkan, which is subject to a variety of plans in detail, how to build it, with what materials, with what structure. And this culminates in chapter 31 with the Vashamru, which we sing pretty much every Shabbat. You shall keep the Sabbath as a covenant between you and God for all time. So covenant assertion climaxes those chapters. So everything is looking pretty good. They're building the they're about to build the tabernacle. They reassert the covenant. And then we have the golden calf incident. Another bit of realism that enters into the picture. I mean, I don't know about you, I love the idealism and I love the hopefulness, which can never be vanquished. But I think I love even more the courage of the biblical author to tell us what is really real. And that in order to arrive at whatever felicity is being held out to us, we have to face and try to overcome, or at least put aside, the kinds of problems that are going to assail us forever. So the biblical author, I think, is an extraordinarily wise individual, maybe I should say group of authors. According to the documentary hypothesis, which is another way of saying it is source theory, that especially the 5 books of Moses can be divided into 4 different strands of authorship. And it's not surprising that once those 4 strands were identified, further scholars who came to their office to do the next thing said, now what is there left for us to do? And they came up with a very quick answer. I can find sub-sources within each source. So I not only have P, the priestly document, I have P sub 1, and I have P sub 2 and P sub 3. It can be divided down almost infinitely. According to the Jewish tradition and also the so-called scholarly tradition, there is a redactor, maybe several redactors, but the redactor goes by the name R, who has put his or their. R can be a group, it can have taken place over a period of time. R is the one who puts it together. According to the Jewish tradition, R is Ezra, who brought the people back from the Babylonian exile, and according to this theory, may have had a hand in organizing the strands of what came to be known as biblical literature. The rabbis say that had Moses not received the Torah on Mount Sinai, Ezra would have merited to have received it. Okay? Almost a second Moses. According to Franz Rosenzweig, R is not the redactor, but Rabbeinu, our rabbi. This is not just a scholarly move. This is a move filled with an impulse to bring a moral order to our understanding of the world. So that from this we infer that the Bible is a moral document. It's trying to tell us how to live a good life. We make a distinction between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is more superficial and not durable. Happiness is deeper and more durable. Aristotle begins his ethics by saying everybody seeks happiness, but in different ways. I think the biblical author is interested not just in pleasure, but in happiness as well, living a rich, flourishing life. And to be able to do that, one has to be both hopeful and realistic. And that's what happens here in the book of Exodus, which in a certain way is an archetype of the combination of soaring optimism and ruthless realism. And when we get to the golden calf incident, R really goes wild, right? Because Moses, according to the Midrash, Moses said, I'll be back in 40 days. The Midrash left at 6 o'clock one evening. So at 5:45, 40 days later, the people are nervous. You know, he's supposed to be back in 40 days. They take it literally. It's 5 to 6. They begin to wonder what we're going to do if he doesn't come back in the next 5 minutes. And he doesn't come back in the next 5 minutes. And so they build something else to worship. This shall have taken you out of the land of Egypt and will guard you along the way. So chapter 32 focuses on the perilousness of faith, that it's always subject to erosion. Why? Because of all the problems that life presents to us. So we have this kind of dip into the void with the golden calf incident. Once the golden calf incident is over and the perpetrators are punished, chapters 33 and 34 begin the process of restoration, repairing and restoring the relationship between the people and God. Okay? So we have this unit of chapter 33, 34, 32, 33, and 34, which deals with the problem and the attempt to overcome the problem and move on again. So that's where we find ourselves in chapter 33. One of the two chapters of the 32 through 34, which works with Moses' attempt to restore the relationship between God and the people so they can then move on. So, beginning with chapter 33. Then the Lord said to Moses, set out from here, you and the people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt, That ought to ring a little bell for us. That you brought up out of the land of Egypt. God is willing to continue the conversation, but not yet reconciled to the need for God to re-enter the picture as one component of the covenant. Then the Lord said to Moses, set out from here, you and the people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt, to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your offspring will I give it. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So much for Theodore Herzl's view, that centuries later, that we're going to take a people without a land to a land without a people. That was his idea here. Kind of a naive optimism because, of course, the land had a lot of people. And so here we find the reiteration of the idea that this land is going to be given to the Israelites, even though it's quite clear that there are inhabitants there. So we say here in verse 1, that you have brought up from the land of Egypt, the land that I swear to, I have sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying to your offspring, I will give it. I will send an angel before you. In other words, I've made this promise. I'm going to keep the promise. But for right now, since this is the people you have brought up from the land of Egypt, I am not going to be the primary leader here. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites. I'm going to keep my promise. But for now, the situation is too fragile for me, too problematic, and I cannot yet fully re-enter the life of the people so that the trek will continue, but I'm not going to be in the lead. I will drive out, and so on. A land, middle of verse, whatever it is, 2, a land flowing, now here it is, verse 3, with milk and honey, but I will not go in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. Okay? So, radical alienation persists. God is not just going to, having been insulted by the people at this long last, after all the gifts that God gave the people, God is not going to be easily reconciled. And I think that that is both realistic and also intriguing. Because the author recognizes, at least I feel the author recognizes, that this is an opportunity for Moses once again to appeal to a God who has been abused over and over again. So we see here, through God's, let's call it, alienation from the people, the opportunity for Moses to show what a leader is. Okay? Paul, did you have a...
Yeah, it all seems rather contradictory because it seems like a love-hate relationship started, the original love-hate relationship started with the Israelites and God. And part of me is asking if God is setting an example for all of us, setting an example for Moses, how to be a leader, to say, I'll give you this wonderful gift, but I'm not going to go near you because you'll piss me off so much.
Yeah.
I'll slay all of you. And it just, I don't quite understand that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an awfully good point that you're making. I mean, why can't God be more godlike? And lead with compassion and not worry so much about the small and the big picture, the small abuses that he has suffered. Why can't God God up? Well, here is a response. This is a relationship. God is not just an idea, but really a player in the drama. And just like any relationship that is deep, that has gone on for a long time, there are going to be ups and downs. And in a way, it's unrealistic to expect that a relationship, which is really indicated here as a kind of paradigm for a relationship, it can suffer abuses, there can be alienation and anger, but the parties show themselves always to be ready for a new beginning. But that new beginning has to be earned and not just given. In other words, the author has a choice. And the choice the author makes tells us about the quality of the author. If I'm the author at this point, I just want to get on with it. So let's have God just say everything is great, I'm going to be leading you, let bygones be bygones. Wouldn't that seem a bit artificial if this is a model of a relationship that both parties need to do some work to bring it back to a kind of equilibrium? And so the greater author is going to spend some time trying to tell us just what it takes for a relationship that has been broken. The Israelites are idolaters. That's a controversial claim, but let's make it anyway. And the God who is in a relationship, I mean, this is the anthropomorphic God. This is a God who has human attributes. One could say perfected, but whatever. This is the God who hears prayer. This is the God who consoles us when we suffer a loss. An idea doesn't console the way a superhuman being, let me just put it this way, does. So I think that your point is very well taken, Paul, because if we have a scale from 1 to infinity, and the further away from infinity, the more problematic you are. We would expect that God have all of the attributes we would like to have perfected. If we're being asked to be empathetic, God should always be empathetic. If we're being asked to be patient, God should be the epitome of patience. So I see this scale from 1 to infinity about all of the attributes. And God should be all at the end, but that at the upper limit. But that would be unrealistic to the author's conviction that this is a full-blown relationship that is going to suffer ups and downs. And if it's static, there's no work to do. If it's dynamic and subject to what happens on the ground, then the relationship can show itself either to be adequate to the task or not. And the fact that the relationship persists suggests that both parties are struggling to make this relationship work, including God, who's not a puppeteer. I don't know if that's sufficient, but Anne? Harachaman.
Okay, so this is God maybe as Father.
Okay.
Because it's very intimate and it's emotional, and it seems like the people are in the adolescent stage where doors are slamming in the house, and, you know, the parents leave for a while, like everybody's got to have a cool down period, or you're going to kill them.
Yeah.
This is the Father.
I like that very, very much. In chapter 34, we get to the different attributes of God. God is just and merciful. And that's essentially what you're saying, that God has many different visages, many different faces, so to speak. And we, just as we do, sometimes we, with our children or with our friends, we're severe. And sometimes we're very open and compassionate. I think the analogy between God, the anthropomorphized God, the God who is like us, only more so, is really very important, because I can't have Martin Buber said I can have an I-thou relationship with a piece of mica, with a cat. Well, you know, God bless Martin Buber. It's certainly, these are certainly not bilateral relationships, whereas the Bible presents God in these very different ways. And that, you know, if you believe in a God, a personal God, it's powerful to think that just as we can present ourselves in different ways, so does God. God can be angry and hide his face. Hester Panim is a very important idea to the prophets, that God, when things are not going well, has hidden his face. Notice hidden one's face does not mean gone. It just means not available at this particular moment. And the face can become apparent again. One word, apparent, not two words, apparent. Jim?
It's interesting because the implication here is a lot of divisiveness. The groups that God's going to do away with, there's no preamble that they did anything wrong.
There you go.
They're farming, they're trying to live, and God created them as well.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, you know, go to this land and, you know, assimilate with the groups that are there, you'll get milk and honey, everything will be wonderful. He's getting rid of them. It's a divisive passage that sets up, even up till today, different groups that are at each other.
Yeah.
There's no implication here that these groups did anything wrong.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get through the day.
So, back in Genesis chapter 15, I'm looking for this quote. I know it's here somewhere, where God is predicting to Abraham that your descendants will go down in Egypt for 400 years, and then I will bring them out. The implication being, or the inference might be, why wait for 400 years? Why not just give them the land now? And in Genesis 15, I'm sorry? 13. Very good, thank you so much. Genesis 13, and 15:13, is that right, 15:13? And he said to Avram, know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land not theirs, and they shall be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation they shall serve, and in the end they shall go free with great wealth. Oh, there it is, and continuing to 16. And they shall return here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. I don't want to generalize from this passage and say this is the view of all the authors, but at least here, the author is responding to Jim's concern that the inhabitants of the land deserve to stay there until and unless they commit crimes that forfeits their right to the land. So a moral component is now part of the calculus. I take it that the author here, this is just a big assumption, recognizes Jim's concern that what does it mean just to take inhabitants and throw them out willy-nilly for no reason whatsoever? So the author is saying to the author, wait a minute now, I've got to introduce a moral component here. I don't think that does away with the problem. I mean, because we can't assume that all the people whom God is going to displace have been immoral. So that, I mean, the whole notion of a chosen people and of a land created for one people only when lots of people have and continue to live there. So I think it's an issue. I think it's an issue. I could say that these passages illustrate different assumptions. One assumption is, look, let's be clear about this. This is a people that God cares about and is going to serve their needs. And I'm going to have to say this dramatically. Another is, yeah, but what about the others? But, can I love other people's children? And the answer is no and yes. There are no children like my children. On the other hand, there's no reason why I can't love others' children as well. If I'm thinking about my relationship with my kids, I see its singularity. And I'm talking about, these are my children. On the other hand, if I step back and don't want to emphasize the uniqueness of my children to me, I can make room for loving other people's children. So in a certain way, you know the Picasso portraits where he has two different views of a face at the same time. So Picasso is really introducing, I don't know basically what I'm talking about here, but the notion of perspective, that a face, anything, can be seen from different angles. And so I shouldn't just say this view is the way that these people ought to be seen. So I think it's a conundrum, but I can see the ebb and flow of certain perspectives, and there is more than one. Mike?
So I feel like the important point of this is not understanding God so much as a sort of a declaration that our actions matter and they have an impact on the world. And if God were immutable and impervious to the vagaries of humans, Jews, or however you say it, then it would absolve us of the responsibility for our own actions.
Interesting.
Right? And so we live in a world in which is God's world, but God is also a participant in the world, and we have influence over that world, and therefore we have to take responsibility.
So as I understand what you're saying, Mike, is that the author's main concern is the moral stature of the people. How is the people doing? And one of the ways of asserting the importance of that idea is to get God involved in this relationship. In a way, God's involvement gives a kind of imprimatur to the very idea of moral responsibility for individuals. I like that. So we have two models here in a way. One is that each party in the covenant has an independent perspective which is subject to what's going on around them. And the relationship is a relationship between two groups, a group and an individual, who are beset with circumstances, one part of which is each other's response. So one perspective might be a parity, P-A-R-I-T-Y, between the people and God, both of whom are struggling with a certain situation, both of whom are doing this well or not well. Mike's perspective is more asymmetrical, that really the emphasis is on the people, And God's role is not exclusively, but fundamentally about giving weight to the people's actions. Nice. Yeah. The covenantal view takes God's role in a way more seriously, not just a standby who gives weight to the people, but God's self involved in these dilemmas.
I don't think there's, in my mind, it's not a difference.
It's not a difference. Okay. They're both covenantal.
Yes. There
Does-
are two sides of the covenant.
And one side is God and God's actions and our judgment of God's actions. In other words, Moses tries to talk God out of wanting to destroy the people. The implication being, what kind of a God does this? So Moses is scrutinizing God's role. Okay, let's go back. So, where are we? The Hivites, verse 3. I'm going to take them to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. Your obduracy is likely to continue. I better stay out of the picture. But the odyssey is going to continue. It's just going to be led by somebody else. When the people heard this harsh word, verse 4, they went into mourning, and none put on his finery. It's an interesting point, actually, because Aaron had asked for the finery of the people to make the golden calf. And one commentator says, well, if they still have a bunch of finery after giving all that to Aaron, they must have really gotten a lot of stuff when they left Egypt. When the people heard this harsh word, they went into mourning, and none put on his finery. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelite people, you are a stiff-necked people. If I were to go in your midst for one moment, I would destroy you. Now then, leave off your finery, and I will consider what to do to you. So the Israelites remained stripped of the finery from Mount Horeb on. So what God is really saying in a certain way, maybe not exclusively, is I'm not going to be part of this process at this point, at least at this point. Now Moses, verse 7, would take the tent and pitch it outside the camp. The tent of meeting, okay? The tent of meeting is often a synonym for the Mishkan in many passages, which means that they both refer to the building in the midst of the people. Here, the tent of meeting, another name for the Mishkan, but something else entirely. And it stands to reason that we would have it here because there's alienation within and to the camp of the people. So if Moses is going to meet with God, it's going to be outside the realm of the people. But there's another way of looking at this, and that is, and this is source theory, so to speak. We have two different sources here. One thinks the tent of meeting is the Mishkan, and one thinks it isn't. There are two very different views of the place in which the people meet God. It was called, notice these two explanations have different assumptions. The source theory is if we've got a conflict, we can seek to solve the problem by pointing to two different kinds of source. The first is, can we understand the difference within the context of the story? And so to think of the tent of meeting coming from a different source, but being from the same source but a different meeting place, illustrates the problems between God and the people. It was called the tent of meeting, middle of verse 7, and whoever sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting that was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at the entrance of his tent, and gaze after Moses until he had entered the tent. Okay? So one interesting feature of this remark is that although the people have been alienated from Moses, after all, he came and killed a lot of people and was very angry at the people now are assuming or presuming that Moses is their leader again. When he goes to a certain place, the people stand up out of deference to him. And when Moses entered the tent, so Moses is going to the tent, and the people are watching. And when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent while he spoke with Moses. Okay, moment of intimacy. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud poised at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow low, each at the entrance of his tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one man speaks to another. We will see, starting in verse 12, that you cannot see my face and live. Okay? So here we have the same problem, a conflict between two views of this, two different sources. Now, those who are not interested in source theory, but are trying to preserve the integrity of the text. In other words, source theory suggests that we have a fragmented text that come from different places, and it's the adeptness of the redactor to be able to put them together, as if we're entering the workshop of the redactor, and he's got a bunch of different sources and many tables around the room. And the guy gets up in the morning and says, how the heck am I going to reconcile this? And he doesn't do a good job, because here it says yes, and soon it'll say no. Those who are opposed to source theory, in the sense that the text is one whole thing, especially if you want to think that God gave it to Moses, then we can't settle with source theory. We have to try to find a way to make it an integral, internally consistent text. And so one commentator says about verse 11 that in fact, now the comment has what we're going to come to, you can't see my face, as a way to understand verse 11. That in fact, this is being presented from the perspective of the people. And the people have watched Moses, and they see him going into the tent. And they assume that this is going to be a face-to-face encounter, when in fact it's not really. Okay? So that face-to-face now becomes reconcilable to not see my face. In fact, it wasn't face-to-face. It was just, that's why I pointed out a few minutes ago that the people are watching Moses go to the tent of meeting. And this, according to this view, I think this is Ibn Ezra, says that this is the people's view. If that seems plausible, fine. If it doesn't, well, fine as well. But you can see the author is struggling, according to Ibn Ezra. Well, let's put it this way. Ibn Ezra is struggling to have a coherent text, because once you lose sense of the coherence of the text, the authority of the text is compromised. And that cannot happen. The Lord would speak, verse 11, to Moses face to face as one man speaks to another. Don't you love the analogy? And he would then return to the camp, but his attendant, Joshua, the son of Nun, a youth, a Na'ar. So this seems false too. I mean, Joshua's been around a long, long time. He's from Exodus chapter 17 or something like that, when he fights the Amalekites. So the commentators say this can't mean literally he's a youth, but sometimes na'ar means an attendant, somebody who is subordinate to somebody else. Again, an attempt to reconcile a potential problem. Would not stir out of the tent. Verse 12. Now we begin the portion for the day. And Moses said to the Lord, see, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, a sign of special intimacy, and you have indeed gained my favor. Moses quoting God. Now, if this is true, if I have truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways. So one of the questions that this portion raises for us today is, why is this a Pesach portion? What does this have to do with the holiday? And we would ask the same question about it, the dry bones Ezekiel passage as well. Because our sages chose, when we move from one portion to another throughout the year, we don't have a choice. You do the first portion of Genesis, 1 through 6. What are you going to do next week? What should we do next week? Let's think about it. No, you do what comes next. So there is a kind of logic inherent in reading of what portion comes next. This does not follow that premise. This is a choice not to continue what has happened before, and the choice has to be animated by a recognition that this is a Pesach portion. You see the point here? So it challenges us to ask, what does this have to do with the holiday? Now, verse 13, if I have truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways. See, Moses recognizes here that this is a crucial moment, that God has said, I'm not going to lead you. Someone else is going to lead you. And Moses needs to know what God's commitments are. So he asks two questions. What are your ways? And who are you? Now, if I've truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways, that I may know you. Love it. An individual is known by how the individual acts. That I may know you and continue in your favor. See what Moses is up to here? God is alienated. God is still angry. And how can we continue this journey through the wilderness unless we know that you are with us? That this is a journey that you are authorizing and a part of. That I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider, too, that this nation is your people. This is what Moses has said to God at the top of the mountain when they saw the golden calf. You remember the argument? You chose this people, so you are caught up in their destiny. You can't at a certain moment just say, I've had it. A very Promethean moment, a bold moment. God, let me point out to you the implications of your act. Consider, too, that this nation is your people. And he said, I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden. Now, in my Bible, maybe yours too, this gives rise to a footnote. The footnote is, I will grant, my face will go and I will. So there are 4 words in the Hebrew. Vayomer, this is the 5th word, the first. Panaye lechu, my face or I. In other words, the face represents presence, standing before one's face. So it's a kind of synecdoche, a part for the whole. The face represents the person. So the Hebrew is, my face will go. Panai is plural, so the verb has to be plural. but it can represent one individual. V'hanichoti, and I will give you rest. The translation, to lighten your burden, is an interpretation, because give you rest can have a variety of meanings. God promises the people early on that when you get to the promised land, I will give you rest from your enemies round about, so that this can be a prediction of the rest God has promised. It can also be, I will take you out of this situation. I will give you relief from this particular situation. So that at a very crucial moment, there is ambiguity here. It doesn't say, I will go in the lead. Panayelechu, I will go. It doesn't imply that I will be your leader. So that the translation here adds elements that are not in the text itself, which is much more ambiguous. And he said to him, unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. It's as if somebody said, I will do this for you. And the other person says, well, now, if you're really going to do it, I just said I would do it. But now you want to make sure that I'm not just talking off the top of my head. So Moses presses him. God says, I will go in the lead, and let's just assume that translation. And he said to him, well, unless you do. Okay? So this is a sign that the struggle continues. Do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people favor unless you go with us? So Moses is asking two things of God. This is the first of them. Are you going to come with us? And are you going to be a leader? Or, as you've implied, someone else is going to do it, my angel. Unless you go with us. So, verse 16 again. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people, I from every people on the face of the earth? This is sort of an echo of Jim's concern as well. Why not other peoples as well? You I have singled out. And the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. Which can be a variety of things. There's a special intimacy between me and you. I have appointed you as the leader of a mission, singled you out for a unique status and a unique role. That's an interpretation. He said, oh, let me behold your presence. Don't you see how amazing this really is? Moses is now asking a second question. Show me, verse 18, Vayomer hareini na et kavodecha, your glory. So the word kavod means glory, it means honor. It comes from the word that means weightiness, to give weight to something. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, honor your father and mother, from kavod. Give weightiness to your parents. Doesn't mean necessarily to obey everything they ask you to do. It just means give them a sense of special honor, okay? And he said, oh, let me behold your presence. Kavod can also be presence. So Moses is now asking the second thing. The first thing is, show me your ways. And God said, okay, now Moses, if I'm Moses at this point, I got a concession. I got something. Now I'm going to really go for it. Yeah. You said you'll give me money for popcorn at the movie. Now I want a hot dog as well. And he said, oh, let me behold your presence. See, Moses is struggling here to know the God who, in whom the entire future depends. They're in the wilderness. They've experienced a crisis. What is going to befall them with God in the lead of the people, or having abdicated that idea? So Moses, at this point, recognizing that God is really involved in this conversation, trying to get the most information he can. The more information, the more sense of confidence and security. And he answered, so he said, oh, let me behold your presence. And he answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you. And I will proclaim before you the name of the Lord, and the grace that I grant and the compassion I show. I'm going to show you my goodness, which are the attributes of God, which come in the next chapter. But I'm not giving the store away. I'm not telling you that since I'm gracious or compassionate, I will always be gracious and compassionate. I will proclaim before you the name of the Lord, and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. I maintain control over when and with whom I show these attributes. I'm not giving away my authority. But he said, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And the commentators who want to see a coherent text take this as the pivot for understanding back in verse 11. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face. And they take this thing as suggesting that that can't be taken literally. And the Lord said, so I will show you my ways being my goodness, but you can't see my face. You can't directly see who I am. And the Lord said, see, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock, and as my presence, as kavodi, as my glory, my weightiness passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have passed by. Whoa. So I've been alienated from somebody, and I'm trying with the other to reconcile it. And finally I say, come over here. Let me put my arm around you and hold you in the palm of my hand as an act of intimacy, of vulnerability. This is what God says. I'm going to hold you in my hand. So this is a very climactic moment, isn't it, of God being willing to come back into the process. Station yourself on the rock, verse 22, and as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand, kapi, the soft part of my hand, the palm of my hand. I will then take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. God's goodness, God's ways, God's back. These are three different ways of understanding what God is going to show Moses. God's goodness. Remember, Genesis chapter 1. And God saw that it was good. Time after time. And at the end, God saw that it was very good. From which Maimonides infers that God's goodness is displayed in the goodness of the world, which has been articulated in Genesis chapter 1. You want to understand God's goodness? Look at God's ways. God's ways are the ways in which the world works. I'll give you a synonym for this. The way in which the world works, one word synonym, science. That's how the world works. So this is the inference Maimonides makes, that religion is not inimical or antithetical to science. Because by understanding the ways in which the world works, we're understanding God's ways, God's goodness, the coherence of things. Science is a way to come to a belief in God. Whoa. I mean, what can we say? What is there left to say? That's Maimonides' view, which I have brought. Maybe we'll get to it or not. Okay, so let's go back to 21 and read it again. And the Lord said, "See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock. And as my presence passes by, I'll put you in the cleft of the rock, shield you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back." So let's think of an analogy. Footprints in the sand. What do footprints in the sand tell us? Somebody has been there. And we can see the event, but not the one who created the event. You can see my back is the historical events for which I am a cause, but you can't see the cause. Something like that. But it's cryptic, isn't it? You will see my back, but my face must not be seen. God's goodness, God's ways, God's back, all synonyms for our access to God according to this remarkable passage. Yes, Lynn?
Klein, this disturbs me just a little bit.
Yes.
Before the "you cannot see my face," what do you make of the second footnote?
For man may not see my face and live.
Well, right above that, this footnote reads,
Oh.
"I will grant the grace that I will grant, and show the compassion that I will show."
Yes.
Seems like a non-committal commitment to me, to show grace and compassion. It's like he's still saying, God is saying, I'm not willing to tell you what that grace will be. I'll know what it will be, and I'm not willing to tell you what that compassion will be. And then we get, "you cannot see my face." I almost feel like God is this horrible to say, too ashamed to look at Moses here.
Okay.
Because he's not committing. I feel like that footnote is a non-commitment to always work with Moses.
So I think there are two things going on here. One is that God is saying, I am compassionate. But secondly, I'm not giving my autonomy away. How I express it, I'm maintaining control over. So I'm not going to tell you in advance that if you do X, I will be compassionate. So God is maintaining God's independence, while also not just saying, I will do, what is God not saying? That I will do whatever I want? I think he's saying, this is how I operate. I'm going to be compassionate, but I'm not telling you when and where. The 400 years, for example, according to Genesis 15, that Abraham's descendants spent in Egypt, we might ask, well, where was God during those 400 years? And one possible answer is Deus absconditus, the God who absconded, and that God was not present for all that time, which doesn't mean that God will always be not present. God comes out of. You know, one can think of this as applicable to Holocaust theology, whether or not it seems reasonable or not. God is not saying that God will always be there and act in a certain way. And in all those years, God was not involved. Emil Fackenheim, in his wonderful book, God's Presence in History, makes something big out of this. He talks about how a covenantal relationship works. Take the covenant relationship of marriage, that in any marriage, you know, I mean, I've said this before, I don't say to a couple under the chuppah, it's 50-50. It's really 100. Sometimes one party needs to rise to the occasion, and sometimes the other needs. It's not going to be always balanced. So Fackenheim is saying that there have been moments through Jewish history where God has taken the lead and the people have merely followed. Whereas as a component of a dynamic relationship, there are times when God is recessive and human beings need to step forward. And Fackenheim's view is the covenant with God through and after the Holocaust is not over. It's just that now the Jewish people needs to take 95% of the action and cultivate the land of Israel. Take charge of the covenant. Okay? So I think that's what's going on here. God is saying, I will be, but not necessarily each and every day. Mike?
So two things. One is, I don't interpret this as God being sort of coy, but it's more of an assertion of, I'm God, you're a man.
Yeah.
So, to me, again, sort of thinking about Job, if the question is, where was God over those 400 years? To me, the answer is, who are you to say God wasn't there?
Oh,
You can't see everything.
okay.
It's egocentric to ask, to assume that God is not there, because you can't see it.
Yeah. And I don't think the Torah makes that assumption that God was not there.
Right.
No, I think it's right. I mean, there gets to be a point. If somebody's in a relationship and that person is suffering and says, where are you when I need you? Day one, all right, maybe tomorrow. Week 1, week 3, where are you? Why aren't you coming to my aid? So couldn't one infer from the non-palpable activity that there is no activity? No. God is there.
Yeah, it's above your pay grade to ask. Just because I can't perceive it doesn't mean it's there or it's not there.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point. So God is God and we're not. And who are we to judge God? On the other hand, if you presume the model of relationship, and you could say, or anybody could say, why presume that? But the Torah seems to presume a binary relationship, mutual obligation and interest. That seems to be the Bible's model, at least in these stories. What kind of what does it say about that kind of relationship? You could assume a different relationship. It's not binary. It's not mutual. God maintains God's total independence, which is plausible. But if it's binary, if I have a mutual relationship with somebody and we both have obligations to the relationship, and you never appear when I am suffering, the quality of that relationship is subject to, so there are two models, and neither is a certitude, don't you think? Because God is God, and therefore why does God have to appear to us without the implication being that God's not around? This is your point.
It's our own limitation.
It's our own limitation, yeah. But on the model of relationship, and one could say, yeah, the model is fine, but don't think that it's exactly the same relationship and so on. So this is the struggle with bad things happening to good people, which of course we can't solve. You know Harold Kushner's great response to this. He doesn't ask why do bad things happen to good people. The title of his book is When bad things happen to good people. that introduces, let's call it the pastoral imperative. I can't answer the question why, but when you suffer, I need to be there. Arthur?
So back to Lynn's comment, this verse, I'll be compassionate when I choose to be compassionate. So I really like the response that this, you have to see this give and take, and God's sustaining his autonomy. But if you think about goodness of the world being a sign of God, one of his attributes, then what sort of world did he construct here? What sort of relationship is this concept of God constructing? How is it that infinite compassion, one of its essential features is it's conditional? What sort of world is it where compassion can't be counted on and is at the decision of God? So that, because there are other religious paradigms out there where the infinite fills the world with grace always.
Yeah.
It's not conditional. It's still an infinite God, still all powerful. So you see, I think it's a troubling verse. And the other comment on science is, science does reveal the complexity and goodness of the world. It doesn't say why it's that way.
Of course.
Until Darwin. And Darwin, I think, introduced a why. And he said there is no why. It's all random chance. But he gave an explanation.
And natural selection.
So natural selection is random chance. And he says that's why things are the way they are, and there's no point in going beyond it. That's the actual deep reality of the world we live in. There is no God involved in the relationship with
Yeah.
us. The goodness that we see, you dig deep in science, you keep seeing natural selection come out, nothing
Yeah.
much more.
Right. And so one response by religionists is that natural selection is God's doing. Or how do you explain the universe at all? I mean, an attempt to slip this back in. But you may remember that Darwin had his theory of natural selection. He published the book in, 1859? And he did the Journey on the Beagle, 1830 to 1835. He already had his idea of natural selection long before he published it. One reason, he said, was that he didn't want to undermine his wife's faith. When you think about this, in a way, the cold-heartedness of the idea of natural selection and random variation, a squirrel is born with red fur. Why does that happen? That's just random variation, but that squirrel is going to be eaten by somebody because natural selection is not favored. But Darwin, with this cold theory, is still very sympathetic to the needs of his wife. And just as he was about to publish it, he got a note from Alfred Wallace, who said, I've been working on this theory. And he comes up with the same idea. They came up with it more or less simultaneously, although Darwin may have gotten to it earlier. And who was it? Charles Lyell, the geologists. Darwin went to him and said, what should I do? And Lyell said, publish it immediately. Get it out there immediately. And Darwin didn't do it because he said, no, but Wallace got it as well. Let's say we've both simultaneously got it, this generosity of Darwin. Right. Well, that's right. This is devastating to theology. Ivan.
This discussion, especially the discussion of the binary relationship, kind of reminded me of a passage in the Jacob story, where when he's fleeing and he sees God, and he says, like, if you protect me and make me prosper, you will be my God.
Yeah, good for you. That's
And
great.
I think it's kind of a message to God that if it is a binary relationship, you've got to be present too. You just can't absent yourself for 400 years or during the Holocaust. That if you want the covenant to continue, you need to be part of it and you can't go away.
I think that's a powerful comment. So Ivan is pointing to the passage where Jacob is fleeing from Esau, and he lies down at night, and he has this dream, sleeping on the rock, and says to God, if you take care of me, you will be my God. And I'm sort of repeating it for the camera. And so that means that just as God can count on us, we need to be able to count on God. And we can ask, we can say, God, don't you see that this is the nature of the relationship that you have put us in, or that we have agreed to? So just as you can count on me, you can count on me to do my part, I can count on you as well. And if you don't, and so on. So what's the inference you draw from this?
That it's almost like a teaching moment for God, where Jacob is saying, you can't absent yourself. And Moses is kind of repeating it, saying, you can't give up being, if you want the covenant to continue,
Yeah.
you have to be an active participant.
It's another Promethean moment, right? It's kind of storming the heavens. Hey, God, I want to point out to you what it means to be in this covenantal relationship. And Jacob's the guy who would say this, because Jacob is a real conniver, isn't he? I mean, he dupes Esau out of the birthright and the blessing. And so, and with Laban, he finds a way to produce animals that he can take with him. So he's the guy to say to God, no, I like that so much. And you draw an inference that in the Holocaust, we could say God has decided when he's going to enter the picture or when he's not, this passage that Lynn raised for us. But your response is, wait a minute now. You can't just do whatever you want. This is a relationship, and you have said mutual obligation. I like that. This is, to me, I'm going to go for it here. The question of God is the most basic question of all. What kind of a universe do we live in? What can we expect? What can we not expect? Is there coherence? Is there something fundamental about life? And I think what one feels about God has something to do with what answer one comes up with. And Ivan is pointing out that one could have said, a la Jacob, where were you in the Holocaust? Where you were responsible too. Yeah. Even a guy like Nietzsche, who proclaimed the death of God, said, and now what are we going to do? And he said something like, without God, there is no up and down, there's no left and right, there are no coordinates, there's no way of understanding the structure of things. So the death of God is not just the death of one being in the universe. It may be the death of coherence and meaning and the possibility of the moral life. Oh my goodness. Yes.
I just had this on my phone because I sent to my daughter. She just got back from Warsaw. And I wanted her to know this quote from Rabbi Yitzhak Nissimah. While living in the Warsaw ghetto offered a remarkable refraining of a stiff-necked people. Our stubbornness, he suggested at times, may be our flaw, but is also our strength.
Yeah.
So stubborn enough to defend ourselves, stubborn enough to remember, stubborn enough to believe that even in our darkest moments of our history, that the future can still be different.
Yeah, I love that. Somewhere, chapter 34, the next chapter, verse 9. And so, verse 8, Moses hastened to bow low to the ground in homage and said, if I have gained your favor, O Lord, pray, let the Lord go in our midst. even though, see, the even though is not, see, it's from the little Hebrew word key. And key, Rashi says that key has 4 different meanings. I don't remember all of them. So even though is a choice. One could say, go in our midst because we are a stiff-necked people. So this can mean 2 things. Yes, we're stiff-necked. Nevertheless, go with us. Or go with us because we are stiff-necked. You should be happy that we are going to be insistent on surviving. We're going to be stiff-necked about our principles. And that's your point as well. A stiff-necked people can be a critique, but it can also be an attribute of a group or an individual that insists on persisting. If I have gained your favor, O Lord, let us go, let the Lord go in our midst, because this is a stiff-necked people. If that's a plausible reading, it's an astonishing reading, because it takes the assumption that stiff-necked is, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. But it can be just the reverse. Mike?
So, that's exactly what I was thinking actually beforehand, which is, that's potentially the answer to the question, where is God? Maybe the answer is, look around you. Look at your fellow human beings. Look at your fellow Jews.
Yes.
I'm all around you. When you're not getting direct contact from me, I'm present in the people around you.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're saying here, which is you're experiencing adversity. Look around you, rather than up.
No, it's a good point. I mean, it's similar to a parent saying to the parent's child, look, when you go out into the world, remember, you're a Klein. Who I am has something to do with who you present yourself as. So here, what you're saying is that God is immanent in the spatial sense, I-M-M-A-N, all around, but not necessarily as God's self, but through God's creatures who act in certain ways. Right.
Stiff-necked.
Stiff-necked. Bob?
But God allowed people to be stiff-necked to their own free will, which he gave them.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we do the right thing, it redounds to God's credit as well as ours, that God has said, here's the challenge. Let's see if you can do it. And if we do it, God's faith in us is vindicated, as well as carrying God's word. Yeah. This is a remarkable passage and discussion, isn't it? In a way, this is the very heart of it all. Jim?
We've talked a lot over the years about sibling rivalry, and the extreme is Joseph and his brothers. But Moses has been told time and again, he's chosen to do all this, and this group was chosen. So in a way, there's a certain entitlement.
Mm. When you
It ends up causing, a lot of the problems are self-inflicted by this sort of arrogance isn't exactly the right word.
Yeah.
But this entitlement that God has thrust
upon Moses.
upon Moses and the group, assuming that whatever hurdles are in front of them, God will take care of it.
Yeah. I'm going to read to you from Numbers chapter 12. When they were in Chatzerot, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. They said, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well? So there it is, the challenge to leadership, which the Torah faces. Now, Miriam, God's got a little message for Miriam here. Yeah. Leprosy. which I think is God's way of saying, I don't quite agree with you on this. So, look, I mean, this is a constant issue about leadership. There's always somebody nipping at your heels, especially if they're perks that come with leadership. So God is reasserting, no, it is Moses. Verse 7, verse 6. And God said, hear these my words. When a prophet of the Lord arises among you, I make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so my servant Moses. He is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak, mouth to mouth. That astonishing locution. Not mouth to ear to mouth. That's how we speak. Mouth to mouth. Moses is the stenographer of God's words. He's not interpreting it. He's just bringing them.
But to that end, when Moses has the interaction with Jethro and the Midianites, it reminds Moses there is the rest of this world going on. We're not in a bubble here, even though we think we are.
See, here's the problem. We study Torah all these years, and you take it seriously. You remember. So I say X, you say, but what about Y? I say, well, here's how we take care of Y. But what about Z? I said, well, let me explain Z to you. Well, what about A? All from the text. I mean, so many of you have quoted different texts this morning. How amazing is that? Really? I mean, whose text is it? It's our text. And you do that. Vivian, I thought I saw your hand? No. Jean.
So what portion would you have us study during Passover?
Kierkegaard? Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I would do something probably, my first impulse would be to do something banal. And that is get one of the holiday chapters and read the holiday chapter. Right? Leviticus 23, about all the holidays. And you would say, well, why are we doing that? Well, I said, well, it's mentioning Pesach here. So this is the Pesach part. And banal's not exactly fair, but it's not nearly as interesting as this particular passage. I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to say I would pick this passage, but that's too easy. That's too easy. Why is this a Pesach passage? Arthur?
Well, it's curious because there's 3 pilgrimage holidays.
Yep.
So you have special readings partly because of pilgrimage holidays. You'd think that this passage would go with Shavuot because it's happening around Sinai, this passage. But it's selected for the 2 pilgrimage holidays that aren't at Sinai.
True.
Shavuot and Pesach, so it's curious.
Well, but Shavuot doesn't have an intermediate Shabbat.
You can't count on the Shabbat with it, yeah. So I guess there's a logistical.
There's a logistical issue, but
I
yeah.
would say these are peak, so if you anybody use this for a pilgrimage holiday, it has to be Sukkot, Pesach, because that's the only one you can be sure, Shabbat. And so I would say this passage is especially critical for the pilgrimage festivals, because these are the peak gathering moments for the community. So you want to use the peak passage when everyone's gathered.
In what sense is it peak?
Well, if we go back to the intent of the holiday, 3 times a year everyone comes to Jerusalem. So it's a peak moment of ingathering.
That's the holidays.
The holiday.
What does this passage have to do with that?
So because what you said, this is the heart of the whole festival.
Okay.
So you're going to take the very deepest part
Okay.
and present it when everyone's most likely to be together.
That's assuming I was right to have said that.
Does anyone argue with that?
Oh, I'll hear it. No, I mean, if I were sitting where you're sitting and you were up here and you said that this is the peak passage, I think I would raise my hand. I would say, well, I'm not sure you're right about this. You know, the story of Abraham, the call of Moses, the Deuteronomy chapter 4, which is all about history. I mean, there are a lot of candidates for it. No one candidate is a slam dunk. Yeah, David.
How far is this portion supposed to go today?
Always a good question. Through the end of 34.
Yeah, so if you get to 34, verse 18.
Good. Let's give us a chance to get there. Chapter 34, verse 18. Okay.
A more pedestrian explanation for why we have this portion.
Say that again?
This is a much more pedestrian explanation for why we have this portion.
Yeah.
When you get to 18, you shall observe the festival of unleavened bread. There it is.
There it is. Everybody agree that, we could, that's the reason why it's a Pesach passage. Yeah, very good. It could be a lot of the different calendars, and that would not be trivial. I mean, it does mention the holidays. And it's going to be used again for Sukkot, which in a way reinforces your point. Let's mention the holidays during the holiday. Let's find a passage. Jean?
Passover is mentioned in Exodus chapter 12,
Uh-huh.
starting at verse 46, 43.
Okay. Yeah,
Chapter 12,
okay. The Passover offering. There's another possibility. So we could do chapter 34, Leviticus 23 is another calendar. I think Exodus 34. Jean finds another passage. So
That's only relevant to the Seder.
that's only relevant.
That's relevant to the Seder, which is the first night. So if we're in the middle of a 7-day holiday.
Okay. So you're, in a way, you're questioning your view.
No, I'm asserting that that's why 34 is chosen rather than 12.
Because,
If we talked about 12, that would only be relevant
on
on the Chag,
the Chag,
whereas this one is relevant
to the whole thing.
Shabbat during the 7 days.
So let me get a sense of the group here. So David is suggesting, and Jean has also offered something. So let's take a vote. So I'm being a little bit unserious here, but also serious in a way. Next year, let's do the calendar in chapter 34 for Pesach. So before we take a vote, think about this.
But that's not what I'm arguing.
Okay, you're ruining my fun here.
Yeah, I'm arguing that's the reason why this is the portion we're supposed to read. But we didn't start with 34:18. We started with 32
Yes?
because that's where we really learned stuff.
So you're,
So it's a pretext for making us study chapter 32 that we have to get to chapter 34.
you're saying the initial choice of 34 might be, it mentions Pesach, but let's build up to Pesach by doing, yeah, right. That sounds like this. Yeah. Anybody have these are all really good questions. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, week by week, ask ourselves, what should we study next week? And not just be beholden to the calendar. Let's choose our passages. Let's make our own Torah within Torah. You got the idea here? What's the essence of it? And we put it together ourselves. That would be a very nice, so we'd have to have subcommittees. We'd have a banquet at the end. Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if we could do it? Which are the big passages? One year, I think we did that, but I chose the passages. but we could do it more democratically. Which are the big passages? So that would be great to do. But who would like to be the leader of that investigation? But make your own Torah within a Torah would be, I would do Genesis 18, Abraham arguing with God, hospitality and arguing with God, Deuteronomy 4, which is all about the review of the history and our obligations. I think this passage really belongs in that too. The essence of Torah, the Torah within the Torah. Okay, so anybody have a further thought about why it's for Pesach?
I don't know, this is a little bit, I don't know, I'm nervous to say what I have to share, but, because, I'm still reading, the congregation we were reading, there was that, Judaism is Love, that book, I'm not sure anyone has read that book, or I think it was discussed in one of the book clubs.
Okay.
But, I don't know, this is, there's this, relationship, I think it's a very, there's this, in the book, the author, the Rabbi Shaitel, I think he talks about, especially in America, there's this reluctance in Judaism to see God in this relationship. But really, it is Judaism, but it's kind of hard for us to articulate. It doesn't sound like Judaism that we know. I think there's a real big push here to have this personal relationship with God in this section.
So you're saying that we have a disinclination, maybe in modern civilization, to think about God as in relationship with us. And the author, I'm going in a way, the author recognizes that there's some problem putting our arms around the notion of a relationship, a back and forth, a challenging and a response with God. And therefore, this is a passage which on a holiday, when we're especially alert to the question of our faith, that we should be talking about it. Now, that's very interesting. And your point is it seems to be a kind of reaction to a modern cultural norm. One could also say, just to build on that a little bit, that this is also about liberation. The liberation of, who is being liberated here? In a way, Moses. Moses is daring to challenge God and to bring God back into the relationship with the people so that they can move forward. And if that relationship is not freed from the trauma of the events before, then we are not truly free until we can really use our minds and our hearts to challenge what is going on in our lives and with the God in whom we believe or find challenged by. Maybe it's a kind of existential relationship freedom that is being struggled for. I'm not fully happy with that myself, but something to think about. Okay, so intermediary Shabbat in Pesach, to say the first non-controversial thing of the day. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. No.
Are you here the following week?
I can't remember. I don't know. Nice to see you too. You didn't see Tristan and Isolde, did you? Well, in the 6:30 hour including two the op itself is 4 hours.
4:15, not 4:15.
Not 4:15.
I wasn't.
I read at the Times yesterday a summary of first the foes, then the lovers, then the dead.
So it's just basically the story.
It's the two of them in a context in which there's tension.
They're always
But very little really happens other than, I mean, it's all, about has discovered Schopenhauer on the way. And Schopenhauer, Kant said you can't do anything in itself. And so Hegel said, yes, I can. And so did Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer, it's the will, the universal will, which means insatiable desire that can never reach its satisfaction. And that is suffering. And so, Wagner's Schopenhauer, this is a big deal.
5 hours of unfulfilled time.
Fulfill only death. And you think about the way Wagner writes, there are no phrases coming to a resolution. Throughout the whole thing, it's always unresolved, which is the musical equivalent of insatiable desire.
There are music. Anywhere near that long without resolution.
No, I'm not on YouTube. Just far away.
So it's left hanging in every.
It's just moving. It's a tour de force. There's nothing easier or more desirable than to reach some sort of resolution. The end of an aria. Thank God I finished that one.
Yes.
This one just keeps going and going. So he has to capture the idea of desire and all the emotion that goes with it. Well, working away. Oh, very, very tense. But the love of Act 2, which is their love night, is filled with passion all the way through.
That's not a consummation.
Well, it's a consummation which quickly falls apart because of circumstances. So Isolde was betrothed to the king, and she falls in love. Tristan is taken her to the king.
Lancelot, but so she stayed with the king, that virtuous thing. That she follows passion.
Passion proceeds. Listen to the prelude of Act 3. And also the prelude to the whole thing, which is just unresolved horror. It's an astonishing achievement.
It's so different from the pages.
Oh, creation of the world.
Yeah, the rhyme. Perfect.
Development is in order.
Not there.
So Wagner wrote the first two unicycle operas and the first 2 acts of Siegfried. And he stopped for 12 years. 12 years! And wrote Tristan and Isolde and Demosthenes. And evidently, as he was working on Siegfried, the third opera, he hit upon, I think he was reading Schopenhauer. And thought is motion, sensation, and desire, a function of the will. So, by the way, Kant said this, you can go to the thing itself, Schopenhauer said, yes, you can. The will, the universal will of which we are a part. And I have a vein of sound with that from my life. I would, in my earlier days, go to and I would say to myself, this is going to make me happy.
Yes. Yes.
Didn't.
Were they happy?
No, it made me happy.
Yeah.
I still have one.
Yeah, that's right. So like,
I was Schopenhauer very early in my life.
okay.
When he wrote Tristan, he wrote something. It's not performable. With a few other so heavy is what he said.
Yeah, I think you agree with that.
There's a lot going on.
Started out, we were just talking about that, we started out at the beginning about pursuing happiness. So I read Thomas Carlyle years ago, said, if you pursue happiness, you get gratification, which is a fountain, which is what you're describing. But to achieve happiness, you can't pursue happiness, you have to pursue pleasure. Well, but that's characteristic of Carlyle's time, right? So, sources.
Well, so in Aristotle points out that there's several things that have to happen.
Yeah, there are things that take work and accumulate over a long period of time.
And like pleasure. Pleasure is one of it for
Pleasure and gratification. Pleasure is to me is that needs more definition, right? You can get there's a satisfaction dimension also. Whereas gratification is just it's a shallow kind of. Anyway, the other thing I was thinking about was Tisha B'Av. In my comment about, when you feel like God is not there, look around. Look at your fellow man.
California,
The squirrels and the trees and everything. When bad things happen, stick together.
yes, thank you.
Don't be so selfish. Recognize that you're part of something larger. I think you're your family, right? Your community, whatever it is, right? Sleep on the floor together. It's an expression, it's a information that we are connected to each other. And it's God's presence in the connection. It's the thing that Job was saying, I think, several weeks ago. Yeah.
except it seems a bit arbitrary to bring God in something the horizontal and vertical. And let's say the vertical is the God connection. Why can't I understand what you're talking about strictly and exclusively horizontal?
Well, what if God's way is sometimes to connect vertically through your horizontal connections?
But let's start with the horizontal. What is being added by adding God to that?
I would say it's a different character than horizontal.
All right, so the answer is yes.
For lack of a better word, it's the covenant.
this week.
Where that add-on,
Oh, it was,
Yeah,
I
feel really,
I take it it doesn't make an inherent difference. We could say that this is our covenant with each other, which is also a covenant with God. But I could say anything. It's a covenant with the monkeys in the zoo. And where does it come out? Where is it expressed? If I do some prayers standing around together, or if I talk about values that are different, in other words, it would have to have a function, not just a name.
so anyway, you picked a date, I got sushi last night. Sooner rather than later.
There's an aphorism, that I have, God speaks to us through assholes. Meaning, sometimes I get my guidance on how to be a better person from people I don't like, who are saying things to me that I don't like.
And that implies, and from that you infer the right way of living. How they help you.
Well, first of all, I have to be willing to listen to people that I would otherwise feel hard to dismiss.
Okay.
And
there's no way to tell that.
what they're telling you,
You're right.
just one human being talking to another. Maybe it's God talking to me. So I don't know.
Maybe it's the elephant very good for you to talk to. What sense is it not?
It's outside of my
I use it.
parameters.
It talks.
Yeah.
In dreams.
Yeah.
And Bernard Shaw said that. She has St. John. She says, I get these visions from God. You know that's just a dream. And she said, how else would God talk to us?
Well, but I would say through other people. I mean, no, they're only prophets in the sense that they're not me. Yeah, I'll not let you go. We'll talk about it.
Good.
Obviously not here next week, I'm in Chicago.
We won't be in Chicago at that point.
I wouldn't be here because I'm getting blue light on my head. People are taking
People were thrilled with him. They came up to me afterwards and they thought it was.
but
So I've been to a dermatologist since this. She has not said that.
If you have a committee,
I
then
went
you
to
could
Genie and then he said to me, oh, you should
use it with
have
ideas.
that. So I went after him.
What's the, it gets rid of it?
Yeah, well, they put a cream on that makes the skin sensitive to the blue light. Blue light gets rid of it instead of cutting. But
There's possible side effects.
Okay, the week after
they
that.
prove at least 2 days. We're very sensitive to
There's a
sun.
whole lot of things going
And
on
if we go out even when it's overcast like this,
with
we get a vicious sunburn.
the sisterhood.
So
I don't know if there's
hoping I'm going to get home,
just
get back to home.
day of activity or.
I don't think that's, so I'm hearing they said in
And there's also,
next week is the end of the first unit.
yeah,
I
there's
think what we're gonna do
on a
in
Saturday,
the clergy meeting,
I'm not going.
decide who's doing particular
you
sessions.
won't miss anything.
And the ones that are just out, I do two of the seven, and then this time Josh did last
Some
week.
years I've gone
And
and
they did four, and she's doing. I'm doing.
day of, there's a day of action.
And maybe more than that.
Sisterhood retreat.
And the sessions have not been good. But there are others. Yeah, well,
I get emails
it's a
from
good
her all the
thing,
time.
isn't it?
She was my,
She was our board.
yeah, representative. Hi,
much to you too.
She's all handpicked from.
Why not? You too. So I'll see you before my birthday, and then I'll see you again before your birthday. No, you're going away, aren't you?
Only on that weekend, I
It's
said.
political and.
I'm going to see Brianna get her,
I don't know.
her hood, she has a few, but she's going to get. So that'll be kind of exciting.
These are the good things.
Right, I signed up for that also.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's all rhetoric. They want you to hear. Do you know what I mean? Instead of my father.